Hello, this is Kathy Hambrick, and welcome to my podcast. Actually, this is the second podcast. We did the first one in July with Malika Favorite. If you missed it, you can still have access to it by going to Facebook or to Instagram. I don't think that many of us realize that this is the week of the 58th anniversary of the March on Washington. On August the 28th, 1963, one of the most famous speeches that's known around the world was delivered to the masses of people who came from all over the country, all over the world, to hear what we didn't know would happen, but it was actually the I Have a Dream speech. And so I want to just share some things with you from my personal collection, my family collection, photographs that my father took of Dr. Martin Luther King and Dr. Ralph Abernathy with my uncle Arthur Atlas Peters in Los Angeles, and also just some magazines, vintage magazines, Life magazines that are part of my family collection, and a special autographed photograph that I'd like to share with you also. So let's just take a look at this history that's on these tables. So you heard me say that, look at this vintage magazine. I'd like you to just take a look at the cover, the titles on the cover. This is September the 6th, 1963. And this Life magazine, wow, what does that say? 25 cents? 25 cents for a Life magazine. As a child, I used to love looking at Life magazine, Ebony magazine, and all of the magazines that my mom and dad would get in the mail. Jet magazine. I think that's really what encouraged me to read, and probably also was my first years of doing research, because any magazine that was in our household, especially a magazine that had Black people on the cover or had Black people as images and stories within the pages, it just always caught my attention, and I tried to read every word. So look at this. This is the March on Washington. They come marching up Conscious Road. What a beautiful picture of that father and the daughter there in overalls at the march in 1963. Some sing or ache, some talk eloquently. Oh wow, beautiful color photographs. And Dr. King is in his suit. I'll point something out in a few minutes in another magazine from the Prayer Pilgrimage in 1957, where Dr. King is at the podium with his robe on. But here at the March on Washington, you'll know the difference in the photographs because he had a suit on. Wow, look, the people cooling off their feet in the water. What a wonderful photograph. You think about last summer with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the marches that took place across America in the summer of 2020. And here this was 57 and 58 years ago, and we're still marching, still trying to find justice and equality. Some of the people who made the March on Washington possible who helped to fund the March on Washington and the Civil Rights Movement are shown on this page. So this says, some celebrities share the scene. Oh my goodness. There's Diane Carroll, Jackie Robinson, James Baldwin, and Mahalia Jackson, who actually told Dr. King at the podium, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." His speech was not planned to give an "I have a dream" speech. He had another speech prepared. And Mahalia Jackson said, sitting behind him, or standing behind him, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." And here she is, New Orleans' own Mahalia Jackson, at the March on Washington, August 28th, 1963. So here we were talking about the celebrities who were actually at the March on Washington in 1963. And then if we go over and take a look at my family's collection of other Life magazines, there's actually 300 vintage magazines: Life magazine, Ebony magazine, Sepia magazine, Time magazine. This one shows celebrities who supported the civil rights movement in a big way. You have Harry Belafonte in the center. You have Sidney Poitier to the left of him. And then here's Sammy Davis Jr. I think that Sammy Davis kind of, he gets a bit of a raw deal because at some point in his career, he supported Richard Nixon. But if you do some research, Sammy Davis gave a lot of money and encouraged Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, who were a part of the Rat Pack, to give money and do fundraisers for the civil rights movement. The date on this one is February 4th, 1966, 35 cents. Then here's another Life magazine, The Tragedy in Memphis. I think I have actually 7 copies, original copies of this one magazine that my family had. This is April 12th, 1968. Back to the fact that there were celebrities that supported the civil rights movement, and this is really one of our treasures. This is Sammy Davis Jr. and Bill Cosby. Please excuse the reflection on the glass. But this is an actual autographed picture. And let's see who's in this picture. Wow. I told you it was a treasure. Sammy Davis and Bill Cosby. And this is an original autographed picture. Thank you to all of the celebrities who supported Dr. King, SCLC, WCLC, CORE, SNCC, and the entire civil rights movement. So part of our family collection also, my father was a photographer, and I grew up in Los Angeles. We went to Los Angeles from Slidell, Louisiana. And my uncle, Arthur Atlas Peters, who's right here, is at the Victory Baptist Church in Los Angeles. And here's a photograph that my father took of my Uncle Arthur with Dr. King. I'm still doing research to try to find out who these other men are walking beside the church that I grew up in Los Angeles. But this photograph was taken by my dad. Here's another photograph of my Aunt Molly, my Uncle Arthur, Reverend Arthur Atlas Peters. Here's my uncle and my aunt seated with Dr. King. And again, I don't know the other people in this photograph. I'm continuing to do research. It's so important that if you have family photographs, you need to ask the elders who is in those pictures, and somewhere write who is in these photographs. Black history begins at home. So we have to tell the story of our mothers and fathers and grandparents and aunts and uncles, and you too might find some treasures, as I have, with these photographs that my father, Harold Hambrick Sr., took of my uncle here with the Abernathy family visiting the Victory Baptist Church in Los Angeles. And then go down to the bottom there, and you can see some names. It has really, really, really been exciting when I was in Los Angeles, and my niece Tyra Hambrick and my sister-in-law Marguerite Hambrick, Harold's daughter and wife, turned over this collection of wonderful photographs that tell the history of Los Angeles through the eyes of my father, Harold Hambrick Sr., as the photographer of these wonderful, wonderful photographs. So in speaking of photography, here's a book in the library of the River Road African American Museum that was donated to us, and it's called The Photography of Martin Luther King Jr., Charles Johnson, and Bob Edelman. Okay? And so if I open this book, first of all, I noticed today, I think this was actually also a part of Harold Hambrick, my brother's collection. It's actually signed by one of the photographers, Charles Johnson. And then if I open up, here's a photograph that puzzled my family for a long time. I had never seen this photograph in a book before or in an actual magazine until after I opened this museum. This is the prayer pilgrimage, May 17th, 1957, and this is my father with his camera at the prayer pilgrimage in Washington, D.C. So remember, or think about this, when I first saw this photograph without the references to it, I thought it was the March on Washington. But I noticed that Dr. King has on his robe here. And in all of the other photographs of Dr. King from the March on Washington, he has a suit on. So the prayer pilgrimage, May 17th, 1957. My mom was actually pregnant with me then. And then freedom acknowledged in a big, big way worldwide with the March on Washington. August 28th, 1963, 58 years ago, this coming Saturday. Let's go take a look and see what our museum mixologist has for us today. I asked myself the question, what did Martin Luther King like to drink? Started to do a little research, tried to even call the King Center in Atlanta. And little did I know that Dr. King's favorite cocktail or evening drink was vodka and orange juice. Some of us might be surprised when you think about ministers and whether they drink cocktails or not. I was a little astonished, but not surprised. Orange juice and vodka. But the drinks that we prepare for you as a part of our Thirsty for History segments are non-alcoholic drinks. But today, I'm going to share a little bit of history with you before our mixologist gets started. Look what I found a copy of. Western Union. For those of you who don't know what Western Union is, and Telefax, it predated cell phones. You'll notice it has SCLC on it, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It's addressed to Mr. Sammy Davis Jr. at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, Beverly Hills. Would appreciate it if you would ask Frank Sinatra to serve as the honorary host and attend a SCLC benefit cocktail party February 18th in Miami. Understand, he will be performing there. At that time, could you please call immediately for additional information? Your friend, Dr. Martin Luther King. I wanted to verify this with the King Center in Atlanta, but I think because of the coronavirus, it seemed that their offices are closed and I wasn't able to reach their curator. But what our mixologist Troy has for us today is what we're going to call the King's Lemonade in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King and all of those who participated in the March on Washington 58 years ago. Well, the King's Lemonade looks like I'll no longer be thirsty for history, at least for the day. It's hot outside, though, I'll tell you. It's about 102 outside in Donaldsonville, Louisiana today. Troy, shake something up for me. By the way, the museum's mixologist, Troy, is available for any occasion. Ha, Georgia Peach. How sweet. And of course, our wonderful blackberries. And remember, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Thank you, Troy. Join us next month for Volume 3 of Thirsty for History with Kathy Hambrick and To Preserve.